He will want to make the most of it, Denis, as he starts with his customary pawn to d4. He's a queen's pawn opening player through and through. But yeah, I think number one, Tanya, it's only been one defeat, but you don't want to allow the bleeding to continue. He cannot lose this game, Denis Lazavik. A draw is fine. He still has another white potentially at the end of the match. But yeah, he won't want to take too many risks. I think Denis will want to get a position that he knows just better than Magnus, because in the last one, he was surprised early and that cost him on the clock. Meanwhile, Queen's Gambit declined, and it's the Magnus variation, as I like to call it. Pawn to a6, pawn to h6. It looks provocative, but it's playable. Modern chess, Tanya.
David, you say a position that Magnus doesn't know well. Is there such a position that exists? I'm not so sure about that. And in game one, we saw Magnus go with h4 and a4. It feels like rook pawn moves are becoming Magnus's favorites on the board.
Yeah, what were we calling him? Alpha Magnus, Carlsen Zero, whatever we call him. He's the pro at these rook pawn moves. Meanwhile, Denis playing bishop to e5. I must admit, I'm not the biggest opening theoretician, especially in the Queen's Gambit, but bishop to e5 looks like a bit of an odd one to me. It's quite a rare move as far as I know. Just planting the bishop there and saying, take me, please take me. And that will be replaced by a strong knight in the center of the board. Black commits his king, and now Denis. What do you think, Tanya? Is he just going to castle shorts? Or is he going to hint, I was going to say, at some pawn storm against the black king? Pawn to g4, pawn to g5. What's on his radar?
That is so committal to play g4, and the big question will be, is that clever or is that rattled by Denis Lazavik? Because then you're only eyeing for safety on the queen side, as you're pointing out, and that would mean a race to each other's king. I think this next move will really show us Denis's mindset into this game. Does he want to play for strategic advantages in this kind of a Carlsbad structure, short side castle, look for a future minority attack on the queen side, or will he go for g4? Predictions, David. Oh.
It's Denis Lazavik. Of course, he's not going to just speculate and play some dubious attack against Magnus. Of course, he'll play the classical way. Denis is so well trained positionally. And yeah, that white knight now looking really nice in the middle of the board. But Magnus Carlsen, or Magnus Carlsbad, as I sometimes like to call him, he loves to lead off in the center. Note how the white d pawn is tied down defending its knight, so cannot move itself. What do you make of this decision, Tanya? It looks like Magnus is just playing for equality now.
It's a big question in the center. And again, I thought that Magnus would simply continue with development, take out that knight to d7, but instead, well, a committal move there, c5. Like you said, you can't take on c5. And look at Magnus's reaction. It looks like he played it, but he's not happy with his own decision.
Yeah. What was that from Magnus? You often see him shake his head, but you rarely at least see him kind of make gestures being like, oh, that was silly. I don't think it's a tactical blunder. It looks like it works fine. It doesn't lose a pawn or anything. I think maybe just strategically he's not too happy with the way the openings turned out, because it's very much black playing for a draw. Pawn to a4. Magnus reacts again. I'm fixated on the camera now, Tanya, since you pointed it out. a4 feels like a step in the wrong direction. Black wasn't going to expand on that flank anyway. And now Magnus has the opportunity to give white an isolated pawn. You have like neutral IQP, isolated pawn, queen's pawn positions. Looks fine to me. We'll have to ask Magnus about that if we get the chance.
Very strange there. And as this one develops, it's going to be a big fight. A big fight is on our other board as well. David, I've got one eye on it right now. Crazy things are happening, and I really want to draw your attention to, yeah.
So queen to b3 from Denis, aiming to slide in. He wants those queens off. It tends to be his strategy. A winning strategy for Denis throughout Champions Chess Tour matches. I like it, Tanya. I think that's a really clever resource. If the queens come off, Black's attack with these pawns will somewhat fizzle out.
If queens come off, it's definitely advantage Denis, because then the c5 and the a6 weakness will be a lot to deal with for Magnus. I'm still not writing him off in any endgame. We've seen what he's capable of, but I think that's the dream with white here. The big question is, does Magnus have time to blow open with either f3? I wanted to say e3, but I believe that's a pawn sacrifice. e3, I don't think e3 works right now.
Oh, I could see Magnus maybe playing e3 and after pawn takes, then play f3. That's the kind of thing Magnus loves to do. This Magnus 2.0 who loves his pawn sacrifices and inspired by Alpha Zero, as we've seen with all these rook pawn pushes. It does feel unnecessarily speculative right now. Why give up a pawn? just for the sake of it. White's king looks safe enough with its bodyguard, the bishop on f1 next to it. But I like your other idea, Tanya. f3 looks extremely tempting.
I love your idea, David. I'm gonna say that. And the more Magnus thinks, I'm inclined to believe he's got this pawn sacrifice on his radar. A position that'll be very difficult practically to play with under 3 minutes for Denis Lazavik. And the line that you're suggesting is e3, pawn takes pawn, don't recapture on e3, but push that f pawn to expose White's king on g1. Magnus Carlsen definitely thinking about it. David, is he going to go for it?
Ooh, the longer he thinks, the more he might get tempted. Normally, the top players, they stop when they smell something. They just sense something a bit fruity, a bit crazy, spicy. But yeah, Magnus's safe move might be rook to b8. Maybe it's just the fact that he's ahead in the match. He'll take the safe approach, just kicking the queen. He does go for it, though. Pawn to e3. I love the spirit behind it, but it's a risk, Tanya.
It's a risk, but the bar, it didn't react. David, perhaps the best move in the position. E3 really creating his chances. We've got a game for all three results. Magnus doesn't want to play safe. He doesn't want to play cautious chess. He's going for it. And f3 incoming. It's got to be f3 at this point.
Yeah, the blue arrow made its appearance. The computer agrees f3 is best. And like you said A, you've got to say B. Magnus is a pawn down, but the white king now being shorn of its protection. Wow, this is crazy. And actually, Tanya, I've got to thank you. I would never have found f3 here if you hadn't said e3 first. E3 was not even on my radar. I saw that square was protected. And then, whoa, e4 given a question mark, f2, the blue arrow? I would never have said this one. That is crazy. That is difficult. What's the idea, Tanya?
I think the point is, David, after f2, white is forced to take with the king, and you come in with your queen taking away the g1 square. Queen to h2, and I'm already threatening some deadly checks on the f file. Could that be the killer plan here? f2, king takes pawn, come in with your queen for the kill on the king.
Wow, Tanya, I think you've nailed it. I think you've spotted it, but that's so difficult. This is where the players, of course, they don't see blue arrows, they don't see bars. To give away a pawn kind of for free, a second pawn actually, with a check, to lure the white king forward and then to come in with the black queen, that would be, I mean, another level of genius.
He's finding this. Tough. He's not missing it. He's gone f3, David. f2, it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Oh my God. Magnus Carlsen, I mean, he's capable. If anyone's capable, he is. But pawn to f2, you can tell by the pause, Tanya, the long pause. Oh my God, he's played it.
He does it. He does it. Magnus Carlsen goes on finding the best moves in the position, and the queen lands on h2.
Wow. I think I would never find that in a million years. And I think most grandmasters would never find that, especially in a kind of blitz rapid game, under 3 minutes on the clock here. But queen h2, that's the star move, Tanya. f2 check. Every top GM looks for checks first, but then you stop. You think white's king was sneaking its way back into the corner, but no longer. The black queen is the jailer, keeping the white king out of freedom right now, out of the safety net of the corner. And like you said, checks coming. The white king is bare. No real protection. It's a big investment, though. White's 2 pawns up. If he survives, Denis wins.
David, you're being too humble there by saying you wouldn't find this. I think if I could spot queen h2, you would play this in the blink of an eye. That's just you being too kind right now.
Maybe in classical, but no chance in blitz or rapid. No chance.
I would actually think that this is ideal for bullet and blitz, because king's safety is of paramount importance right now. And with just a minute on the clock, look at that. You're so inclined to make big mistakes, and Magnus once again playing all over the board. We were looking at a check. He's eyeing the b2 pawn first.
Yeah, this poor white king is getting hit from every single angle right now. King's best friend is a knight, but white doesn't have any defenders. White doesn't have any protection around it. And I'm already seeing some tactics. Now there's some checks. Where's the white king going? The blue... Oh, that darned blue arrow. Rook to b4. That's a tough one, I've got to say, Tanya. But just trying to capture this pawn. You think Magnus is going to find that one?
Rook f8 check. That is the most human move in the position. You put the king in further danger, and Magnus sacrificing a third pawn in this game.
Oh my God, who cares about pawns? He's trying to rip open the black, the lines for the black pieces. It's all about the B file right now. If the black rook gets in, checkmate. Or win a material, game over. c4, rook takes pawn, we should mention, walks into a pin. The black bishop comes to life and wins material. this is another level. This is game of the tournament so far, or at least in the winners' semi-finals today, Tanya. B takes c4. Surely there's a check. Surely there's a knockout blow now.
Rip open the B file, and that's going to be rip for the king very soon, is the kind of feeling that we get. Dennis's king out in the open, the rook's coming in, all the heavy pieces in the attack. David, with 3 extra pawns guarding the king right now, c4, d5, e4 is the big shield. But is it going to be enough?
Wow, the white king, it's needing all of its best warriors around it, defended by these pawns, as you say, Tanya. If the queens come off, white wins. Game over. 3 pawns to the good. But wow, Magnus is trying to get his pieces in and behind now. And Denis, 26 seconds. Defending is the hardest thing in the world. Queen c1, only move to survive. He doesn't find it. Magnus is winning, but how? Oh my gosh. Bishop to c2 check.
And then rook b3 if you capture the bishop. You win the queen on e3. Magnus Carlsen doesn't miss this. He's going to play bishop to c2. David, he's got this one. He sacrificed 3 pawns. He's going to sacrifice the bishop for the win.
He has to. He has to find it. He has to play it. There's nothing else. And white is actually consolidating with the extra 3 pawns. If white gets more time to play like bishop f3 or bishop g4 to come in with a check, white is going to win this game. So Magnus, he's shaking his head. Magnus actually hates winning queens, by the way. A little tip I should mention about him. Here, white would get a rook, bishop, and still maintain pawns for the queen. So bishop to c2, check. Will he find it? I'll show it if he doesn't, but bishop c2, check. He's got to play it, Tanya.
David, I think he's going to find it, but it's about evaluating that end position. Bishop c2, you give up the bishop, you give up the rook for the queen, you're down 3 pawns already. It's about how Magnus Carlsen evaluates that final position.
Yeah, but if there are no other options, then you have to go for it. Magnus now about to tick under the 1 minute mark. Denis has been under for a long, long time. But amazing defense, I've got to say, from Denis. It would have been so easy to collapse in the face of these shocks, these kind of throwaway sacrifices. Tanya, rook f2. What is that? Oh my god. I don't even see. Queen takes rook?
Is that legal? Is that legal? Can you play rook f2 in this position?
Queen takes rook. Denis finds the best move, queen c1. I'm still trying to work out.
Queen takes rook? David, really quickly tell us, what was wrong with just picking up the free rook?
Okay, it's Magnus's move. We're going to dive in very, very quickly. Just backtrack here. Queen takes rook would have walked into bishop c2 check and mate in 6. Rook takes c2, rook b3, queen g5 from Magnus Carlsen. This is another level, and checkmate. We'll jump back to the game, though, where the players are throwing the moves in. Denis has won a rook, but Magnus has given up material, and Magnus is going to win the white queen. What's happening here, Tanya? Is Magnus winning? There's still so many pawns left, though.
It's queen and bishop for 2 rooks and 3 pawns in the center. Magnus has to fight against that white king. Materially, it's still looking good for Denis. If the pawns roll down the board, that would be chances Denis right now. But with the attack against the rook and the king, it's difficult. Giving a check, the rook has to fall back. Another check.
Wow, this is so easy to get confused in.
Oof.
Tanya, it's not over. The position repeating itself twice now. Magnus needs to find a new way forward, but it's so scary if these pawns start advancing.
Will he? Or is he just going to repeat?
Magnus, 20 seconds. He said it himself. His head went earlier today out there in Poland when the clock ticked down. How much risk is he going to take? He plays on, Magnus.
Magnus Carlsen goes for the win. He doesn't repeat in this position. It's game on, but the c-pawn is marching down the board. It looks like Denis has made some progress here.
Yeah, this is still a 3-result game. White can play rook c2, push the pawn forward to c7. Magnus, again on the camera, gesturing there. Rook c2. This is turning. Denis is alive and kicking. My god, c7 might be the only move. White's about to make a new queen.
You can give a check on d6. The queen is coming into g3. This is crazy. A game for all 3 results. The bar is level. Draw is the least likely of it. White is about to queen with a check on c8. You don't have time to pick up the rook on g2. I think this is the moment. You repeat here. But is there a repetition?
But how? There was no repetition. Denis is playing for the win, and Denis has won the black bishop. Look at Magnus on the camera. smiling, shaking his head. He knows he's blown it, and Magnus is fighting for his life now. Magnus is fighting for a draw. White will not lose this one.
And
Oh.
David, I think you should be able to earn the draw at this moment with the checks, but Magnus instead picks up the d5 pawn. I think Magnus is still playing for the win here.
Yeah, I spoke too soon. Curse of the commentator. I thought the white d-pawn would stay alive, but he dropped it, Denis. Pretty much for free. It's still a draw. Black shouldn't be able to create a pass pawn on the king side. And Denis's rooks are perfectly aligned for a fortress. But yeah, still some chances here for Magnus Carlsen. It's all about the clock, Tanya. This has been one of the craziest up and down games of the whole event so far.
Absolute roller coaster. How impressive has Denis been trying to keep this position under control, doing everything right so far. Rook g4 was a big threat, winning the queen, stopped by Magnus, but that king on h4, it's looking a bit scary. And Magnus, he looks a bit frustrated on the camera.
He looks frustrated because he knows he's getting close again. He's had to win it all over again from square one, but it's still a draw. The white rooks hold the third rank, they hold the line, they hold the door, and right now it should still be a draw. But he's going to try everything, Tanya. That's Magnus.
And still not repeating with checks. Magnus has the draw in his hand whenever he wants it, but he wants more. He's tying up white's rook to defend themselves. Can he find a way to actually push that g-pawn? He wants to combine that idea with threats of giving up the queen for the two rooks. So white has to watch out for a check like that.
He does. He has to watch out. But Magnus leans back, exhales, repeats the position. It's actually draw by agreement. Magnus, look at that smile, Tanya.
Magnus Carlsen can't believe it. We can't believe it. Denis Lazavik better not believe what he's just done. Unbelievable stuff right